Okay, so this will be the comment response to why are people proud about not doing pet battles? First one. No one is proud of not doing pet battles. People that don't play pet battles, almost everyone that plays WoW, never even mentions it because it's really small, unrewarding, and an irrelevant part of the game. I have literally never heard of anyone who are proud about not doing pet battles. Actually, the only people I hear mentioning pet battles at all are a few YouTubers like you and Hazel Nutty. Yeah, so this one kind of brings up a good point. This might have been an incredibly specific discussion topic. I was thinking maybe I should have more broader terms when I make future discussion videos. But I think, I think it's fine doing stuff incredibly specific. It's just because it's so specific, lots of people don't really have anything to say on it, or they just talk about the topic in general. In which case, I'll just, discuss what they're talking about as well and, kind of go off topic a little bit. So first up, no one is proud about not doing pet battles. Sure, it might seem like that to you, because by your own admission, you don't really do them. But someone like me, who makes YouTube videos, and I mention pet battles in those videos, sometimes offhandedly, because I like to make jokes about how pet battles are a very integral part of the game. Because the joke being, it's just a mini game that a lot of people don't care about. And whenever I mention pet battles in videos, I'll get a whole host of comments about people talking about how they've never even tried them before, as if it's something they're proud about. I also have a pet battle channel, where I'll get people comment sometimes about how they've never tried pet battles and it looks stupid. It is a thing people do, and I know it sounds dumb, but that's why I made a discussion topic about it, because it's like, it is dumb. Also, people don't really play pet battles. I mean, sure, I would 100% agree it's a minority of people that actually do it. But it's popular enough that Blizzard has said it's, a feature that a lot of players like. And that's why they keep adding stuff to it. But not too much. They don't go super overboard. People aren't, clamoring to subscribe to WoW in order to play pet battles. Alright, next one. Tried pet battles, couldn't get into it though, don't care about Pokemon, and I don't care about pet battles. Now, to all the people that say pet battles taking away precious development time away from actual WoW content, I'm pretty sure there's a team dedicated to this aspect of the game. Just like there's one for balance changes, hot fixes, server maintenance, instant releases, gear conceptualization, story writing, marketing, PR, HR, etc. The problem you guys have is that it looks and feels meaningless on the surface. Like it's just a dumb ripoff or copycat of Pokemon. So, while the argument is defendable on paper and seems reasonable at first, pet battles is no different than transmogging every single gear slot. I've spent a good 3 months, if not more, running Dragon Soul just to get the legendary daggers for my rogue. Reason? Because I could, and felt like it was justification enough for my subscription every month, until I got them. I enjoyed the feeling of accomplishment after getting the pair. Being able to glide for a small amount of time with dragon wings is an added visual fluff. So yeah, I see the reason why it's a success in Blizzard's eyes, and the players saying it's pointless. I'd like to know who is actually legitimately complaining about transmog being as big of a time waster as pet battles. If anything, transmogs are deceptive, and that you have to spend gold to put them on, so there's an incentive behind the concept. Same as in pet battles, but not as obvious, or immediately rewarding because the content has been current for more than 1 or 2 expansions now. Pet battles would make for an amazingly interesting machinima idea to watch in my opinion. It could be a complete parody of the show, or as serious as JoJo's, and I'd love watching either several times over. Why? I don't know, but it's pretty funny to see a ripoff making fun of kids-oriented franchise that has been going for 20 years straight after the anime studio was done with the original Berserker show back in the 90s. Okay, so this one's kind of a lot. First one, main one, they probably have a dedicated programmers to pet battles. Maybe? We don't actually know that for sure. For all I know, they could just be taking people from other departments and telling them work on this pet battle thing, after you're done with your real work. That could explain why they have so few pet battle updates every expansion, but that they do have pet battle updates every expansion. If they had a dedicated team working on pet battles, then they're very not busy for most of the year. Also, transmog, I think that's a little bit more accepted than pet battles, but mainly because you can actually use your transmog, while you're in a raid. And there's plenty of people who don't like transmog. There's like the whole, classic community who hates transmog because anyone can put on any gear, instead of everyone being able to tell at a glance if someone has some of the best gear in the game. And pet battles as a machinima idea, I'd love that. I can't imagine there's a huge market for it, considering as someone who makes pet battle videos, and is probably the biggest pet battle maker of videos on YouTube, they don't get a lot of views. So I can't imagine that would be worth your time, considering machinimas already don't get very many views. I guess it had to be someone who both has machinima knowledge and just wants to do it for fun because they like pet battles. So if anyone was gonna do it, it would probably have to be me, and I do have something planned as like a mini episode within a machinima series that I'll probably make like in a year from now, because these things, they take a lot of time and effort and they don't make money, so I can't immediately work on them, and instead I have to set things up for people to make them for me. But as its own standalone series thing, no, I don't think that's gonna happen, but that I do love the idea of it as well. I just wanted to point that out. Never played Pokemon, but I love pet battles. But in my opinion, people think that pet battles are for casuals, and for some reason, casual players are looked down upon as bad and ruining the game. I've never understood how someone being a casual player ruins the game for someone else who may consider themselves hardcore. I've taken flack over the years because I love achievements. I'm a collector, pets, mounts, transmogs, doing quests, etc. However, I'm not hurting anyone by being a casual player and doing the casual content. But what people don't take into account is that, until very recently, I also did a lot of dungeons and raids, and randomly would do BGs, but they always focused on the casual side of my playing, as if I should only focus on the dungeons and raids, and the rest was bad. Obviously, I've ignored that, and I continue doing whatever I like, be it pet battles, a BG, a raid, or working on an achievement. See, I always forget about this little argument here. There are people who don't want to be clowned on by their peers for doing something unconventional. I've personally always been very open about my hobbies and what I like, even if they're unpopular. But I sometimes forget that's not the norm. People like to not stand out, or to fit in, or just to do things that their friends like. And that's perfectly normal. And the way I do things is not the norm. And this person commenting here seems to be doing the same kind of thing, which makes sense. So if pet battles were more mainstream and more acceptable, I think there would be a lot more people doing it because they wouldn't be afraid to do something unconventional. Maybe, that could just be like one of the many possibilities. Also, the whole argument on casuals, casuals are looked down upon in pretty much every game, despite the fact that they make up a majority of the gamers in all of those various games. I think I mentioned this in the original video. Most people who play these games, competitive PvP games, are casual players who think they're elite players, and that makes up a majority of the audience. I forget who said it. It was like some YouTube reviewer was talking about it, and they made some really good points on it. So I've just been kind of parroting that opinion. So I think it makes sense. It sounds about right. I'm sure you can think of a couple of people who are decent or not very good, but think they could, raid with method if they just applied. Alright, next one. I had my doubts when pet battling was introduced, but well managed to out-Pokemon. Pet collecting and pet battles are a diversion for me that helps stave off burnout. Heck yeah, pet battles is very intricate, deceptively so, because the individual pets themselves are very simple. Each pet can only learn 6 moves total, and they can only choose 3 of them at a time. And you can't choose any of the 3 moves. Like, the way Blizzard will sometimes balance pet abilities is to literally just, swap the tiers you're allowed to choose them from. That way they can't be too broken. Like with the Terror Claw Hatchling, it was one of the best pets in the game, and the only change they made to it was to swap 2 of its abilities around, so they couldn't take both of them at the same time, and it completely fixed it. It's no longer overpowered, and it's now just kind of a standard pet. And since there's so many pets, I don't know how many there are. Over 600, I know that for sure. Over 700, 800, I don't have an exact number. There's a lot of them. Only about a little bit less than 100 of them are like viable. Well, not viable. Every pet, as surprising as it may seem to hear, is viable to an extent. It's just some are marginally better, so they will always be picked over the other ones. And then there are some that are kind of borderline broken, but can still be beaten by normal pets. So, those ones are always going to be taken as well. It's kind of balanced. It all just comes down to prior planning and strategy if you want to be able to use them correctly. And there's so much that goes into collecting and battling them and having the correct team comps. I wouldn't say it outdoes Pokemon because there's the crazy amount of customization with like breeding and shit like that. But it does enough to distinguish itself. Alright, this next one, because they suck. Fair enough. This is the general sentiment I see whenever I talk about pet battles in videos. I don't think people hate pet battles as much as they say. I think they hate what they think pet battles represent. And by not doing pet battles, they're resisting this overlaying change that encompasses both pet battles and other features. What I would say this overlying change would be an overall shift in the game that happened probably at the end of Cataclysm and forward, and that being when LFR was introduced. Then pandas, then pet battles, then legendaries for everyone 3 expansions in a row, Titan forging, free loot chest every week, etc. People associate pet battles with this change in the game, and by resisting pet battles, they are resisting that mindset that they feel all these features reside in. Now, this was a good one, and I haven't really heard this argument being made before. That is true. Pet battles were added when they started adding a lot of the easier things to World of Warcraft, because LFR was introduced in the last raid of Cataclysm, and the next expansion introduced pet battles, along with pandas. And, looking back on it, people nowadays generally have a positive opinion of Mista Pandaria because it was a great expansion. But so many people bitched and complained about the pandas. And I've heard tons of stories about people's friends who quit playing the game literally because of the pandas. And basically all this taught Blizzard was that they shouldn't take risks and just stick to the normal Warcraft thing. Which is a shame. But it was also the trend of other, more accessible things being added to the game. Mista Pandaria was the last expansion to have reforging. The last expansion to have gem slots in all your gear. And enchanting for all of your gear. Man, Mista Pandaria was like the last expansion for all the good stuff. And they just kept removing things and then making stuff more accessible. And I guess that was also the expansion that introduced pet battles, so it was around that turning period. I can kind of get that argument. Alright, so this next comment basically goes through all the points and makes some, not arguments, some thoughts about it. Pet battles is basically Pokemon. Yes, they are similar a bit, but honestly, I like pet battles, but I don't like Pokemon. Finishing the whole game in Pokemon is a piece of cake, where finishing stuff on pet battles is hard. Less moves, more pets make more combinations, more strategies of playing. You need to think more about what pet you want to use. In Pokemon, you can level up your starting Pokemon and he will defeat most stuff. Yeah, playing through the main storyline of Pokemon is way easier than trying to get into pet battle content. To the point where I sometimes would get asked questions from people who wanted to get into pet battles or were just curious about it, and they'd ask me what my main team in pet battles was. And for the longest time, this question confused me. I was like, main team? What are you talking about? There's no such thing as a main team in pet battles. And they never really expanded upon it as like, what pets do you use the most? I was like, I use a ton of pets. There is no pet I use the most. There's a couple of pets that are good for a lot of different strategies. Like the Nexus Whelpling, but there isn't any one team that beats everything. And it wasn't until like way later on that I finally remembered, in Pokemon, you can have a main team for the storyline. Like when you're leveling up, you can just catch the first 6 pets you find and beat the game with it. No problem. All you can do is just, level them up a little bit. They don't even need to be diverse types. You can have all of the same type and still beat the entire game. It just makes it a little easier if you have diverse types. Whereas in pet battles, that's not possible. Because the game kind of starts at max level. Kind of. There's a lot of content for when you're leveling up your pets. That's kind of the first thing you do is get your pets to max level. And at that point, you have to think about types and team composition. You can't just out-level your opponent like you can do for a majority of the game in Pokemon. So the concept of a main team exists in Pokemon and just doesn't in pet battles because they're just so fundamentally different. Pet battles makes game less hardcore. Yeah, I'm sure pet battles are the main source of this problem. Like the person in the previous comment said, it was kind of like around the trend when Blizzard started making the game less hardcore and to cater more to the casual players. So I can kind of see that argument now, since that last person pointed it out. Pet battles are childish, true, but I don't mind. Yeah, that's true. Pet battles are pretty childish. I don't really care about that kind of thing, though. I don't need to constantly prove my adulthoodness or my masculinity for not liking cute things. I'm very comfortable with myself. Blizzard is doing stuff for pet battlers instead of new raids. There's probably some special people who makes mainly pet battle stuff. They're paid for doing pet battle content, which is popular and really advanced. Also, I think they're helping in other stuff anyway. See, this one, I think I also touched upon this a little bit earlier. I don't think they have dedicated people working on pet battles, but if they did, yeah, they'd probably be working on other stuff anyway. The thing is, we don't actually know, so this is all speculation. But as someone who's been following pet battles closely since Mists of Pandaria, I can assure you they don't spend very much time on it. Despite the fact that I would love that. Pet battles is too grindy. Maybe, but honestly the grind is mostly really nice and enjoyable. Compared to some other grinds from WoW's history, this one is probably one of the best ones. Yeah, I don't think the grind is that bad. Then again, a grind is a grind is a grind. Pet battles is too simple. Compared to Pokemon, yes. However, a lot of skills matters and you need to decide which one will be better for this fight, which one will have a combo with other skills, maybe from different pets. This is not as simple as you think it is. Yeah, that's the thing with pet battles that doesn't really happen very much in Pokemon, outside of PvP. Because PvP Pokemon is a different ball game. Is that a lot of the PvE strategies in pet battles relies on combos with a couple of different pets working together. It's very rare that you take on a fight without having to combo something with something else from 2 different pets. Sometimes even 3 different pets. Like the legendary bomb team. Pet battle PvP is garbage? Sadly, yes, but world PvP is also garbage. That's funny. Like, out of all of these comments I've read, pretty much the one consensus is that pet PvP is garbage. It is, but not for the reason you'd think. Like, pet battle PvP, they do attempt to balance it. It's just they make one balancing decision every expansion. So, at the end of every expansion, they go through and balance pet PvP. And then you have like a new meta for the next 2 years of the expansion of which pets are going to dominate before Blizzard will nerf them in the next expansion. And this has been happening since Mists of Pandaria. So every expansion we get like a soft reset of the metagame because Blizzard goes in and nerfs everything that was too strong. It's kind of like how Hearthstone balances things. They never buff anything, they just go in and nerf the really strong stuff. The reason pet battle PvP is garbage is because there's only one way to do it, and it's to queue up from a system that doesn't have an MMR feature. So someone who's brand new to pet battles could go against someone who's trying to get like their 5,000th win. There's just like no order or rhyme or reason to it. It's just there's one queue for PvP and that's it. And there's not really any rewards for it outside of achievements. I hate pet battles. It's pointless and it's stupid. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to run 17 toons through ICC to get a mount I've been farming for 2 years. Because the popular mount collecting is obviously vastly superior to the exact same thing, but smaller and more interactive. Also, I just got a transmog I will never use by running a dungeon 23 times to get, and made 300 gold while doing so. Checkmate, pet battlers. Edit. This is sarcasm. Yeah. Farming mounts is much more widely accepted, as I'm pretty sure most people who have played the game have farmed at least one mount. And that's because mounts are used all the time. Like, can you remember the last time you logged into WoW to do something and didn't use a mount? Like, even if I'm just running from, I don't know, the innkeeper to the nearest flight keeper, I'll get on a mount to go do it a little bit quicker. or I'm just running from the mailbox to the mission table. It's a mount journey. Mounts are incredibly useful, even if they're not as interactive as pets. But the thing is, you get mounts very easily. You get a mount basically as soon as you're able to buy one. And at that point, why would you want to get another mount besides the default one they give you? Well, because they look cool. And it's socially acceptable to go out and farm different mount skins. Even though most of them functionally work the same way, Blizzard is adding more and more mounts that are more useful and do other things. And I think that is a step in the right direction for how they should go into the future with mounts and their mechanics, because people love mounts. So I understand the comparison. You know, people will farm a whole bunch for mounts, but then they scoff at the idea of farming pets. And that's because mounts are more useful, as much as I hate to admit it. Same with transmog to an extent. You can use those in raids. If anything has use to people in their everyday WoW lives, it's obviously going to be more accepted. Pets are almost entirely their own separate thing. You could never actually learn how to do PvP pet. I mean, you could never train to do pet battles and be perfectly fine with playing the game. Whereas you're completely gimping yourself if you don't get mounts. Well, then it comes down to, you know, if you're farming mounts, you're just doing it for cosmetic reasons. And at that point, is pet battles really so different? It's okay to farm for cosmetics, but not okay for pets. Pet battle isn't part of the Warcraft canon, right? It's more just a massive non-canon Easter egg, like that sunflower farm in Hillsbrad. As long as they keep it away from the WoW books and major quest chains, I have no reason to complain about the feature. And before you say, I also don't want to have Harrison Jones as a major lore character. This actually brings up an interesting point. Pets are part of lore, like without a doubt. I mean, Kel'Thuzad, he had Mr. Bigglesworth, right? You know, there's lots of characters in WoW who have pets that don't actually fight, kind of like Tyranda's owl, where it's an integral part of how she, you know, scouts and deals damage and everything, but it's not a pet battle. I mean, there are owls that look exactly like it and have like lunar abilities and everything, but you know what I'm trying to say. I don't think they really are part of lore, like people going around with pet battling. I think it's just a fun little Easter egg thing, but it would be interesting to see, you know, like Blizzard's official stance on it. I've never once thought about how pet battles are thought about in WoW's lore. Other than the fact that I know for sure, you know, people have pets. And I'd assume the ones that battle are completely restricted to just how hunter pets work. And I love how hunter pets work in lore. Next one. You know how some people announce adding people to their ignore list? It's like that, except with content. They don't like pet battles, but they aren't happy with just ignoring them. They want to make them feel bad by telling everyone that they're doing so. Yeah, you see, that's a good one. That's probably what it is. They don't like it, and they want everyone else to know they don't like it. So they proudly exclaim it. Alright, this next one is a long one. I don't think I'm going to read the whole thing, though. Never heard of people being proud about not doing pet battles, despite talking daily in general, guild, and now community tabs. I think you might have read a really rare comment, as in 0.0005% chance of stumbling on that comment. The truth is, no one talks about pet battles, at least not on my server or the ones I'm merged with. It's such a small community, it's not worth a complaint. But if you're looking for it, you'll find it. Just Google why do people hate X, and you'll always find someone hating something. Sure, true to an extent, but also, like I think I said this in the original video, I'm in a unique position where I hear a lot more from the community than the average person. So I do hear these things, especially since I do talk about pet battles a lot in videos. And I'll get lots of comments about people bragging about never have trying them. Whereas it's perfectly reasonable to believe that the average person, someone like you, never hears anyone talk about it within your monkey sphere. Should I call it a monkey sphere? That might sound dismissive. Monkey sphere is a psychological thing that kind of just describes your sphere of people that you interact with on a daily basis. It's like an all-encompassing term for the people you talk to, and the people you talk to who they talk to. That would count as your monkey sphere. and people develop their worldviews based on that monkey sphere and think everyone else thinks the same way because everyone they talk to and everyone they talk to talks to all, say this thing or believe the same way. And within my monkey sphere, I wouldn't say I talk to, I just get a lot of comments from a ton of different people. Whereas the average person probably doesn't see these kinds of things. Or it's very reasonable to assume they've never heard or seen this kind of comment before in their life. It's a very niche topic. It's not very broad in general. So yeah. I kind of just, agreeing with your statement that you've probably never heard anyone mention these kinds of things before. And the rest of the comment is just talking about BFA being bad in general. This video is about pet battles, not BFA. That was the last video I made, so I'm just going to go off onto the next one. I feel like pet battles are okay. The problem is that they feel like single-player content. The PvP is garbage, and 50% of the players I have been coming across are just bots. Yeah, pet battles are very much single-player content. That's what I love about it, because I love playing WoW as a single-player game, which I think would make another good discussion topic, because that's another thing. People don't like it when I say that. I'll mention that sometimes in videos, and I'll get tons and tons of hate comments about it. Like, if you like playing single-player games, don't play an MMO. And to an extent, I can't completely dismiss their arguments. Because, an MMO is basically about the community aspect of the game. But also, WoW is a good single-player game. And people do have they do have some opinions about why, the people who consider WoW and like WoW as a single-player game might be ruining it for the people who like the social aspect of the game. Which, like I said, could be its own discussion topic for the future. I think there's lots to discuss in that, and it's not as simple as, I like it as a single-player game, so I'm right, and everyone else is wrong. The PvP is garbage, and 50% of the players I've been coming across are bots. Sure, PvP is bad, but like I said a little bit earlier, not for really the reasons people would expect. Overall, pet PvP, kind of balanced. They balance at every expansion, and since BFA just came out, we're currently in the stage of the meta where people are finding out which pets are broken. And I think it's the Twilight Meteor pet, but I don't really agree with that very much. And lots of bots in PvP pet battles. As someone who used to make PvP pet battle videos every day, I can't remember ever running into a noticeable bot. So if you run into 50% of them, wow. That's something, considering I've done, literally thousands of them. And all of them have seemed like real players to me. I've heard of bots, though. I'm not completely dismissing this. I've heard of it on the forums and everything, about how there's some bot teams. I've personally never run against them, and I've done a metric ass ton of PvP pet battles. Well, I would love to get an answer for this comment. The reason I don't do pet battles is that I have no damn idea of where and how to start. The guides I see are just pets to level first, and I don't like to get into it, but help Hiru. Hazel Nutty Games has a good guide on how to get started if you're new to pet battles. Even though the video was made back in Mist of Pandaria, it's still current and up to date. Like, how to get started is still the same as it was in Mist of Pandaria. The video's old, but the video is still legit. I personally don't make guides. That's just not what I do. Like, if you want to get into YouTube, there are a couple of videos you can make that inherently have an audience, because YouTube is the second largest search engine in the world. So if you make videos that people would search for, that's a good way to grow your channel. That's like, that's why some of the biggest WoW channels, make guides or cover the current events and news or whatever, because those are things that get searched out. And whoever messes with the search optimization, not messes with it, but, caters to it, will do very well. And of the things that do very well for search optimization are guides and top 10s. And a couple of other things that I don't do. But of those two things that I mentioned, I personally prefer to do top 10s, and I don't like to make guides. I think they're really boring to make, and they require tons of research. So while I could make guides about pet battles and everything, like Hazel already does that, so I just kind of point people to her guides. even if they are kind of old. And I just kind of hope she makes an updated guide for it so people, will follow it instead of thinking it's for Mr. Pandaria so it's no longer valid. And man, that was a huge tangent to just say. I'll link a video in the video description. Next one. Played Pokemon since 3rd grade. Still can't pronounce the word Pokemon correctly. Right, I'm sorry. I'll make sure to pronounce it as Pokemans from now on. I don't know how I got that wrong. I've never done pet battles primarily because of the time commitment needed, and obviously I'd rather be doing, Warcraft things. What is the major appeal to it? I feel those who enjoy pet battles, such as yourself, are probably also enthusiasts to Pokemans. Besides the card game, I never could make it very far into Pokemon games. I have never heard anyone brag about it, but this entire video seems to also belittle those who choose not to play. Yeah, you're probably right on that. I was already a lifelong fan of the Pokemans, so probably, I was more inclined to try it and give it a shot. But I'm pretty sure there's plenty of people who've never played, the Pokemans, so they probably never really cared to even attempt pet battles, which is perfectly fine. I guess it could come across as belittling people who don't choose to play pet battles. I try not to be that way, but just because my intention is to not belittle people who choose not to do pet battles, and considering I made a whole video about how people who brag about not doing pet battles are, a problem. Is it really a problem? It was more of a question about why do people do that? And why is it such a popular thing that people do? And I guess it can come across as belittling, even if I'm not really trying to. Because, like they say, we judge ourselves based on our intentions, but we judge other people based on their actions. My intention is not to belittle people who don't do pet battles, but it could easily come across that way, so I do try my best to not come across that way. I try to, be very fair with the negative criticisms and everything, and try to give, reasonable explanations when I give my opinion to, both sides of the argument. But even with that, I do have my own biases. I am human, and I'm not perfect, and I'm not, a complete robot who only ever has neutral opinions on things. So my biases probably do come across. But just know, if you don't do pet battles, that's fine. I'm not trying to force you to do it, and I don't think less of you for not doing them. The video is basically just talking about why are people proud about not doing it, and why do they belittle other people who do pet battles. Alright, next one. I guess it is simply because, for one, there are much better games doing almost exactly the same thing but better. LOL, Pokemans. And for two, if you are really that bored, you feel like playing a game within a game, I can honestly tell from personal experience, you need to get off your chair, get a job, get a social life, and stop wasting your life on absolutely pointless bullshit like WoW in general. Hope my personal experience and opinion shows you the light. Now, I think this is a joke comment. I thought it was at first, but then I saw him reply to someone else, and he had another very not, ambiguously sarcastic comment, also talking down about pet battles. So I'm just going to go off the assumption it's a joke comment anyway, and just kind of discuss the points being made. The whole, if you're really that bored that you feel like playing a minigame within a game, that you should be doing something else. I mean, who are you to dictate the enjoyment people have in things? For example, I like to do weird shit with Yu-Gi-Oh! Yu-Gi-Oh! Is a card game that's been around for almost 20 years now. And they constantly release new cards all the time, so there's tens of thousands of them. And even with tens of thousands of cards available, since there's no standard rotation, every card that's ever been printed can be used in competitive tournaments. And even then, there's only a handful of meta decks that people play. So at that point, it's why would you ever play any other deck that doesn't try to win? It's because it's fun. It's fun to try to get stupid little decks that aren't viable, that don't work, that have terrible cards in them, and try to get wins with them. And I built an entire YouTube channel off of that concept, and it's doing very well for itself right now. To the point where this month, it has actually passed my WoW channel in, views and revenue for the first time ever. And despite the fact my WoW channel is not doing very bad for itself. Just because it's a dumb little thing, a mini game within a thing, doesn't inherently make it less valuable or, disruptive or terrible. It's okay to have fun doing stupid shit. Not everything needs to be serious or even needs to have a point, just as long as you have fun doing it. And if you have fun playing a mini game within a mini game, because that concept in itself is fun and novel, that's great. It doesn't mean you need to, get a social life or anything. It just means you're having fun with life and you don't take things too seriously. But also, like I said, not sure if this is a joke comment or not, but it does bring up a good point that I thought would be, a good thing to discuss. Next one. What does Lorem, ipsum, dolor, sit, amet mean? It's filler text. I put that in descriptions to be replaced with something else, but for these videos, I don't really know what to put there yet since they're still kind of experimental. So what you're seeing in the video descriptions of these videos is the default video description that you can have set up. That comes up whenever I put a video to upload. That way, if you see a YouTuber's video description, they have all those links and everything else in it. They don't put those in for every video. It's just a default option you can set in your settings, and then you can change it later. I have Lorem ipsum there because that's filler text that newspapers use to, see how their layouts would work if they had text on it, and it's just there to be replaced. If you see it, that means I didn't replace it. That's all it is. Alright, last question. I cannot speak for others, only myself. Do I do pet battles? No. Have I tried them? Yes, back in BOP, only briefly. To me, it felt like Pokemon some, so I was simply uninterested. Would I say I'm proud to not play them? No, of course not. Pet battles are simply a feature in WoW that many people may or may not use. It's an option for people that some enjoy, and others don't. I mean, I don't like PvP and I avoid it, but I'd be called crazy if I said WoW should remove it. Pet battles, to me, are like any other feature in WoW I don't use. I'm glad it's there for those that like it, but it's not my cup of tea. What a very reasonable response to have with this. I wish more people were like you. I agree with you in your pet dungeons. The rationale that they take up resources seems silly. Aside from having to make the rewards, it seems like all they need to do is make the teams you fight against. Does it take resources? Of course. Does it prevent a whole raid? That sounds absurd. My guess is raids needs artists to design the look of the place, the bosses, the visible gear, encounter designers, equipment designers, item stats and abilities, and 10 to 30 people to playtest it at once. A pet dungeon at most needs resources to make a few pets, and some people to determine what the pets will be fought, then a few people to playtest, since only one person is needed for a run. Compared to a raid tier, it is negligible. I can't say that word. Frankly, when I heard about pet battles, I was happy for those who would want them, since it sounded cool for pet battlers. I hope they enjoy them and the rest of the pet battles. I think this was meant to be the first comment, and it somehow got pushed to the back for some reason. Yeah, perfectly reasonable things. It's just a very nice comment that kind of goes over a lot of the points and sums them up very neatly. He's someone who doesn't play pet battles and doesn't really care to play them, but also doesn't care that other people play them. And also doesn't get irrationally angry about pet battle content being added to the game, like pet battle dungeons. Because, pet battle dungeons are just reusing old dungeons. It's nowhere near the same amount of time that goes put into, a new dungeon being made, or a new raid, because they only ever use old dungeons that already exist. Alright, and that's it for this. I tried to cut down the amount of comments I chose. I originally chose like 30 of them, and then I cut it down to 18, because a couple of them were kind of small. I said I only wanted to choose 10, but some people said they like the negative comments, as like a break in between the serious ones. So I thought, under 20, that sounds like a good enough spot. Still seems kind of long, though. I need to find a way to make these shorter. Mainly because, for those of you who don't know, this channel, the Azeroth Weather channel, is ad-free. I don't make any money from it, and I don't really care to make money from it, because the whole reason I moved, the WoW news videos to this channel in the first place is because they weren't doing well on the main channel, and they were just bringing down my numbers. So it was actively hurting the main channel, and at that point, I've had series that don't do well in the past, and I just stopped doing them. But I kind of liked to do the news series. So instead of canceling it, I just moved it to its own channel and just accepted the fact that I wouldn't make money from it. Because I was barely making anything from it anyway. So it's like, who cares? I'm just going to do it for fun. I do that all the time. So this series itself is also just something I'm doing for fun. I don't have any intention to make money from it. But because of that, I can't have it being time consuming. Like, the whole reason I stopped making a lot of my alternate side channels that I did for fun is because they took up too much of my time. And I only have so much time in the day to actually make videos for, the 2 channels that do make me my money, that allow me to send scripts to other editors to make stuff for them. Because for my job of making YouTube videos, there's a lot that goes into it besides just, making my own scripts and making my own videos. I work with a lot of other people as well to get some of the bigger videos done. And I also have to limit the amount I work, so I only work Monday through Friday. So I have to get all that work done, within a 5-day time period, because I used to work 7 days a week and that destroyed my body, so I can't do that anymore. All that to say, I have a limited amount of time I can work on these, and I can't dedicate too much time to them. So I was thinking about cutting the discussion videos, since I'm still, in the early stages of figuring these things out, how I can do it in a time-efficient manner. Is maybe do, a discussion video one week, and then the reply the next week, and then not make a new discussion until the next week as well. So, 1 week will be discussion, 1 week will be the reply, and then the next week will be the next discussion, instead of starting it on the next day. That way, it doesn't take up too much of my time, and I can still do it, with not having to take up too much of my time. That's all it is. It's like a time management thing. Because there's a little bit more that goes into it than just, the hour that you see in the video. For every... this one, I don't really do very much editing. It's like there's a lot that goes into picking out the comments and then screening them and then editing the video together. It just takes a lot of time for something, that I'm just doing for fun in place of other work. Like, this is editing time that could be spent on an actual video, for one of my main channels. And putting together 2 of them, I don't think I could really do that with the amount of work I do for the other stuff. And the reason I'm doing the discussion video on this channel rather than the main channel is because I want the main channel to only have highly edited videos. And this is definitely a low effort thing that I'm just doing, to basically talk about my own opinions and things. It's just something for fun. It's not hard to make a discussion video. But it's also not an insignificant amount of time either, especially if I'm spreading it over 2 days. All that being said, if you have an idea for another discussion topic, I'd love to hear them as well, because I only have, 2 or 3 other ideas, and then I'm out. So I am looking for suggestions on what to actually talk about.